Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we've got Shrine of the Storm and its boss guides here. And up first we have Aquasir. Now Aquasir will be casting Surging Rush every now and then, which is a frontal charge that has damage and a knockback. And it is very important to note that you can be knocked off of this platform and instantly die. So make sure that you sidestep and avoid this rush and do not fall off the platform. Aqu'Sirr will also randomly cast Undertow at a player, which will deal damage and start knocking the player away from the boss. This player should hug the boss as soon as the cast goes out and continue running forward throughout the whole duration in order to not get knocked off the platform. There is also a random debuff that is cast as a 20-second dot. If it does get cleansed off, it'll immediately throw out a lot of little AoEs around the person who was debuffed, and anyone hit by any of these AoEs will also receive the debuff. So the healer has to choose whether to cleanse the person and everyone avoids the AoEs on the ground, or whether to just heal through the damage of the debuff. At 50%, the boss will split up into 3 individual adds. You have to make sure that there's one person standing within melee range of each one of these adds, or the add will be casting a big damaging ability. And all you have to do is nuke down these adds as quickly as possible. They do also do the Surging Rush, which is the frontal charge, which does damage and knocks you back. So make sure you don't fall off the platform when that goes out. And once you take care of all 3 of these adds, the boss will come back up and all you need to do is finish off the boss. Now in heroic and mythic level difficulty, there is one additional mechanic. There will be tentacles that spawn from the ground and actually grasp someone in your group. This person will take damage and will be unable to move. So what you need to do is everyone needs to run over to the tentacles and DPS them down as quickly as possible. Up next, we have the Tidesage Council. One of the more difficult fights in my opinion in Mythic, and this is a 2-boss fight. First we have Galecaller Fay, and she does a spammable cast, which is an AoE called Slicing Blast. This does damage and puts a stackable debuff on everyone in the party. Now you should interrupt this cast as much as possible, and whenever you see a reinforcing ward on the ground, you should go over to it and stand on it to remove all of your debuffs from yourself. Now at 100% mana, Galecaller Fay will create a swiftness ward, which will increase haste and movement by 25% for everyone standing in it, players and enemies. And the other boss is Brother Ironhole. Now Brother Ironhole has a frontal cone damaging ability called Hindering Cleave. It does big physical damage, and it actually has a 70% snare attached to it as well. So just make sure that you do not stack on the tank, and the tank has to face this boss outwards, and this boss will cast a reinforcing ward on the ground at 100% mana. Anyone standing in this ward will take 75% less damage, both players and enemies, and you can use this ward to cleanse off all of your stacks of debuff and snares off of you. One other thing to note about this ward is that it will spawn underneath Galecaller Fay every single time. Now in heroic and mythic level difficulty, you do have one additional ability per boss. Galecaller Fay, every time she is interrupted for her cast, she will actually spawn a tornado. Just make sure you avoid the AoE underneath it. And Brother Ironhole will have a self buff called Blessing of Ironsides. Now what this buff does is increases damage done by 100%, but actually snares him by 50%. So what you need to do is kite the boss and make sure to stay away from the boss when that Hindering Cleave goes out. The Hindering Cleave can be outranged, so make sure you use a movement ability and get out of the range of that cleave, especially when the boss has the self buff. Up next, we have Lord Stormsong. Now Lord Stormsong has a spammable cast called Void Bolt. Just make sure to interrupt that as much as possible. And Lord Stormsong will actually spawn orbs all around the arena that are going to be chasing down a person. Now if they do happen to reach you, you will get a big burst of damage and a 5-second stun. So just keep kiting these orbs as much as possible. And the other thing that happens in this fight is that he will summon a Mindbender. This Mindbender will be placed on top of a non-tank player, and this person actually needs to run into all the orbs with that Mindbender debuff on them. Now the Mindbender falls off when that player reaches 50% HP, which should happen naturally if that player runs into all 5 orbs. Now in heroic and mythic level difficulty, you have one dispellable debuff throughout this fight called Mind Rend. It is a dot that actually does damage over the course of 10 seconds, so just make sure you're on it with dispelling. The last boss in this dungeon is Vol'Zith the Whisperer. He has 2 phases, and in the first phase, he will be spawning zones underneath himself with the Yawning Gate cast. This AoE on the ground does silence and damage, so just make sure not to stand in it. And then throughout the fight, there are also very hard to see tentacles that are going to be spawning and slamming on the ground. This does big damage, so make sure you avoid it as best as you can. Also, randomly throughout the fight, debuffs will go out on players called Whispers of Power. This will increase the damage and the healing that they do, but will not allow them to actually get full healed. So the healer has to manage these debuffs and determine whether he needs to cleanse them off to full heal the person, or if they can keep a few of these stacks. Now at 100 energy, the boss will actually phase all of the players into 2 different phases, one for the DPS and one for the healers and the tanks. The DPS will have 2 forgotten denizens. All they need to do is interrupt every single cast that goes out and DPS the mobs down as quickly as possible. Now the healer and the tank are going to get the Sunken Denizen ad, which actually deals large amounts of damage. So as a tank, you should be DPSing the ad as much as possible, but since it does do high damage, make sure to kite the ad as much as you need to. So if you have active mitigation downtime or running a little bit low on resources or defensives, make sure to run out and kite the mob as much as you can, and then run in and continue DPSing. Once all of the ads are down, you need to go back to the boss, interrupt him, and you're back to phase 1. Now if you are running this dungeon on heroic and mythic level difficulty, after that phase where you get split up between DPS and heals and tank, the boss will actually spawn a ton of ads that will be running to the boss. If these ads reach the boss, they will explode, causing big AoE damage to the whole group. So these ads have to be nuked down before they ever reach the boss. Now that does it for this guide. If you like my content, like what I do, want to help support the channel, go ahead and visit my Patreon down below. I do also stream every Wednesday and Friday here and on Twitch, so give me a follow on your favorite platform. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, good luck out there.